And just like that, Chicago Bears minicamp is over. That's right. Welcome into the Bear Report podcast. I'm Steven Johnson. He is Zach Pearson. And Zach, it was a very quick couple days out at Hallis Hall and getting the entire team together. And while still not fully dressed and ready to rumble and getting into the physicality of the game, still some interesting takeaways over the course of the days at minicamp and what to expect under Ben Johnson.
Yeah, 3 practices out at Hallis Hall. Pretty good weather for 2 of the 3 days, which was nice. But yeah, the off season's rolling on, and now there's a couple OTAs next week, and then they break for training camp. So good to see, the progress that they've made under Ben Johnson. They just went through OTAs. They now going through mini camp, and we've been able to be out there for 5 of these practices plus the 3 rookie mini camps. And I think you could kind of see some things that Ben Johnson wants to fix and work on, and some things that he likes to do, some tendencies that he has with his practices. So yeah, overall it was good, and we're kind of learning more and more now about Ben Johnson as a first-time head coach.
Yeah, definitely a different vibe than we've been used to the last couple years with Matt Eberflus, and the fact it's a little bit more intense, even if things aren't full go for the team. There is definitely a vibe of the team needing to get things right, that if there is a screw up, this coaching staff is going to make it very known from a vocal standpoint, which fair to say was missing the last couple years as well, because again, Ben Johnson, even coming from the Dan Campbell tree, and Dan Campbell's a pretty intense guy. I don't know if Ben Johnson's to that point of a Dan Campbell, but at the same time, it's kind of refreshing that you're seeing that type of thing play out, not only with Ben Johnson, but with a lot of the positional coaches as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely feels like a little bit of a difference than last year, the last couple of years. When you look at like how everything fell apart last year with Matty Eberflus and the discipline, a lack of discipline. Now it's Ben Johnson, very detail oriented. If something's wrong, he's going to stop practice and get it fixed. We saw that in OTAs with him getting on Cole Kmet. We saw it now at mini camp with, getting in and out of the huddle, making them redo it, getting on Caleb Williams. He talked about that on Wednesday, how, he was late on a throw, a new route, a new play that they're putting in, late on a throw to Roshan Johnson, and he kind of let Caleb know. I guess the good news is, like, he said Caleb is very receptive and he wants to be coached. And, there's no hard feelings or anything like that. He understands, like, we have to get this stuff right. And even talking to the players, who kind of feel that vibe from them, like, yeah, now is the time to get this stuff right. We don't want, everything to be out of sorts come training camp. And, I go back to last year, and you just kept on hearing Matt Eberflus when he was asked, about the operation and is there improvements. And it was clear to everyone that went to training camp, everyone that saw highlights or read the stories, like, the operation was not good. And he kept denying. It's like, yeah, operation's good, operation's good. And, false starts and illegal formations and delay of games. That's like, yeah, man, the operation's not good. So at least Ben Johnson's kind of, nipping it in the butt. And, I don't want to say he's like demanding perfection, but he's demanding things to be done properly and get fixed when he calls it out.
Yeah, and to start there, overall, the relationship between Ben Johnson and Caleb Williams has definitely been one of the main stories out of this mini camp. And Ben Johnson was even asked afterwards, after the practice, you were pretty vocal there with Caleb Williams, like, what's going on there? And he's like, well, he was late. He was
Yeah.
late on the ball. And there's just a bluntness that is so appreciated, to essentially not feeling like there's a need to mask anything that does go wrong with a positive. That's not necessarily something we see a lot of, that, that bluntness, that you need to understand that not everything is sunshine and rainbows. We're on, I think maybe year 4 or 5 of the Bears winning, quote unquote, the
Yeah.
offseason. And it's time to take off the rose colored glasses. And having a guy like Ben Johnson at that podium on a daily when the Bears are in Hallis Hall has been such a breath of fresh air from that perspective. And again, listening to him say that, like you said, Caleb Williams very receptive to what he is being given and how he is being coached. And you'd have to imagine, based on even all that stuff that was put out from the book. And again, that was a big topic as well. And
Yeah.
kudos to them, they brought it up. But on the flip side of that, he wasn't getting that coaching last year in his rookie season, and now he is going to get that, probably even more so because of that story, that they're not going to let anything fall through the cracks, so there can be that belief that he is not being coached. And I'm all for it. Like, I'm absolutely all for it. And there was even, mentioned Ben Johnson saying the defense has gotten the best of the offense during the 2-minute drills, but then also saying that he's making improvements. And you saw the improvements and where he needed to go with the ball, and that when the lights are brightest, he's going to show up. The game has slowed down for him. That, yeah, you can still be positive, but you got to mention where things are at, plain and simple.
Yeah, I mean, we can't, go out there and say, everything's been great for Caleb Williams on the offense and in mini camp and OTAs. It hasn't, Last couple of practices have been good. And Ben Johnson said that on Wednesday where, he said that we haven't been out there for every practice. The defense has gotten the best of the offense, especially in those 2-minute situations. And I think Thursday and, Wednesday and Thursday's practices were more situational, whereas Tuesday's practice was kind of just an extension of OTAs and kind of what we saw, these last 2 days, they've been doing that situational stuff, the 2 minutes, the end of half, the end of game. You need a field goal, you're down 2 scores, you have to get the ball back, kind of things like that. And, Caleb Williams was good in the 2-minute and, delivered some really good throws. Had some throws he probably want back today included where kind of threw across his body and, there was pretty much no one in the area of the ball and except for a defender. That's going to happen. But you also saw the throws of Caleb Williams off platform on the run being, flushed out and throwing strikes and throwing between 2 defenders to Roma Dunze. You get a little alarmed when you say, in coverage or in between defenders, but he's got the arm strength and the ability to get it there. Like, you're not scared it's going to get picked off all the time in a way.
And to that point, I mean, in the NFL, in games, you're going to have
Oh, yeah.
to dictate how the offense goes through having to throw into some of those tight windows. And
Yep.
again, the fact that the Bears have a quarterback with a very strong arm and that ability is going to pay dividends. You might not see it now. And like you said, you might see it's like, okay, why are we throwing into double coverage against somebody here when
Yeah.
clearly it might not be the best idea when you get the lay of the land and what he's looking at on the field, but it's a sense of he's still making those throws that make you say, did he really just do that?
Yes.
To keep that rolling and seeing that, knowing that that exists, and being able to utilize that talent in the right scenario. It's gonna get there. It will get there. I believe it's going to get there. But on the flip side of that, he needs to get the buy-in from his receivers as well, because like you mentioned, Ben Johnson, he was really hard on Cole Kmet, and Cole Kmet had some very interesting things to say this week as well that we can get into. But between him and Odunze, Luther Burden, like what's
Yeah.
what's going on there? We don't know what's necessarily going on there. And then DJ Moore talking about just overall body language.
Yeah. I mean, it's an interesting wide receiver group, and
Yeah.
with Burden, it's still the soft tissue that he had at rookie mini camp. And Johnson's actually asked, about him or asked about Loveland, but it kind of gives you a little bit of a hint to Burden as well. But they should be ready for camp. Hopefully, I think that's kind of the goal now. I don't think you're going to rush out Burden with the soft tissue. They have a couple guys with soft tissue, which is seems to pop up. Usually this time of year, as you're kind of getting back into the thing of swing of football, you're going from essentially a college season or an NFL season to no work in the off season. I guess if you're a rookie, you get the combine stuff and the pro day, but it's nothing like going back into these practices right away. So that stuff kind of flares up. But yeah, I mean, DJ Moore, Roma Dunze, they've been here before. They've played with Caleb Williams. Those are probably the primary guys. Zacchaeus is actually a guy, and Devin Duvernay, two guys I thought had pretty good mini camps and OTAs, just kind of catching, passes, nothing crazy flashy. Zacchaeus had a couple yesterday, I think a 20-yarder and probably a 15-yarder, but just kind of reliable targets. And I think that wide receiver 3 battle is going to be fun to watch. And I think the Bears are going to have 3 to 4 guys who can be wide receiver 3 or 4. What happens with Tyler Scott? Where's he at? Does he get a roster spot? So yeah, but with Cole Kmet, what I thought was interesting, he was asked about the whole Colston Loveland in the draft pick, and he said he was taken aback a little bit by it. To me, I think he was expecting probably offensive line. Like I think he thought, there'll be a left tackle there. Maybe he bought into the rumors of Ashton Jeanty. Who knows? But I think the good news is Ben Johnson cleared it up for him. He gave him a call. It's like, this is what we're going to do. This is what we plan on doing with their offense. And I mean, honestly, I don't know if it's too much of a surprise to Cole Kmet. Like, you have to know, you've been with Ben Johnson. You've probably watched tape. You've seen all the 12 personnel they want to run. And it was just him and Durham Smith on the roster. So it's like, they're going to add another, tight end at some point. So yeah, I
And
mean, I don't think it's the end
like,
of the world they have 2 tight ends. I think it's actually a good thing. I think Cole Kmet could still be a contributor.
yeah, I mean, he definitely can be, and it's something that I feel like has just
All right.
been we're just beating a dead horse. The 12 personnel, everybody knows it. It's the big thing, and that's the justification for the Colston Loveland thing. But the fact is, even though that was the case, I don't think you're going to see Cole Kmet necessarily being used for his receiving ability
Yeah.
as much as we have. If we want to compare, and again, it's a really hard comparison to make because it's Brock Wright who was the tight end 2 in Detroit last year. He had 13 catches. Like, that's it.
Yeah.
It was the Sam Laporta show. And yes, it's probably going to be separated a little bit more. And Cole Kmet is a more athletic receiver than what Brock Wright is. But at the same time, the writing's kind of on the wall. And it is appreciative that Ben Johnson did go through the motions of calling him and explaining it and understanding everything that's going on. But again, when you also hear that, he's getting kind of laid into about miscues and other issues on the field, that's also not helping him, especially for the fact that he just signed a pretty good extension
Yeah.
as well, and makes you wonder, okay, long term, is it better that the Bears have a veteran like Durham Smythe waiting in the wings, where there is a now pretty obvious cut candidate if Colston Loveland ends up being a guy worthy of the 10th overall pick like the Bears took. There's a lot of questions there that I think Cole kind of led into, but
Yeah.
then sugarcoated of, well, they did their best to talk me through it, and I understand. And the entire trajectory of who he is as a player is now flipped on its head, essentially.
Yeah. And I mean, I guess the good thing, it's not good that a player is injured, but like for Cole Kmet, I mean, he's getting all the tight end 1 reps because Colston Loveland's not out there right now. And I think that's a positive for Cole Kmet. But you're right. I mean, when Loveland is caught up, he's full speed, which is going to be tricky because when you're a rookie, you're behind in the NFL. That's just the nature of it. You're behind from the start. 99% of rookies are behind from the start. if you miss time in the offseason, you keep falling behind more and more and more. We saw it with Kieran Amagaji last year. Guys like Kevin White, he was out the whole year and he was behind. He had other injury issues, but even when he came back, he was behind. I think, the most recent example I could think of is probably Roquan Smith, who wasn't behind on much because he came in and, he didn't play much that first week, but he had an instant impact week 2 of that the 2018 season. He sat out a little bit for contract stuff. Yeah, I mean it's good that Komet's getting the number 1 reps right now. But yeah, I do see more of the blocking. Watching Colson Loveland's tape, he just looks more fluid as a route runner. He looks more fluid as a pass catcher. He's kind of got that pass catcher build. And you can move guys and at times. I mean, it wouldn't shock me if we saw Colson Loveland in the slot and Cole Kmet as a tight end, and you got DJ Moore and Roma Dunze on the outside. I think the Bears are going to mix things in, a lot. They have a lot of different things they can do, but yeah, we'll have to kind of see the Cole Kmet storyline will be very fascinating to watch this year because, I mean, let's be real. I mean, we've seen times where Cole Kmet has looked like an all-pro tight end, a stud tight end that you could build, into your offense, but we've seen times where he's disappeared, and maybe that's not all his fault. Maybe there's been some throws from quarterbacks in the past, or inconsistencies at the positions. Kind of just things like that. So yeah, but I did find it. I thought it was interesting when Komet talked, and we asked him about Ben Johnson getting on him a couple weeks ago, and his answer, he said, "Well, Ben flat out told me, he goes, I'm trying to get to the ball, man. Like you got to get lined up in the right spot. You can't be a yard behind because a yard in the NFL."
Is an eternity.
It is. You're yard behind on the line. That's an extra couple steps there that you could use on your route and break off. So, yeah, I mean, how they use these tight ends is going to be very interesting, and we'll kind of get a glance at that in training camp.
For sure, we will, and it sounds like all systems will be go by then. But you mentioned for at least Cole Kmet's sake, taking advantage of a rookie, kind of not necessarily being ready to roll. Complete opposite at left tackle. Ozzy Trapillo really setting the stage and maybe making some people think the Bears could be starting a rookie at left tackle come week 1. He's looked pretty darn good, all things considered.
Yeah, I mean, he's looked as good as you probably can look without pads on and stuff like that. There's moments where guys get by him, but for the most part, from what I've seen, he's held up. If I were to handicap the race between him and Kieran, I'd give the advantage to Ozzy. And I'm doing a takeaways article, and that's actually one of my takeaways was I think he's, ahead of Kieran right now. When will Braxton Jones be back? How will they divide up the reps for Braxton Jones and Ozzy? But I think when we comes to training camp, I think the battle is going to be, you're going to see Braxton and Ozzy Trapillo kind of battling out for the left tackle spot. And, Ozzy Trapillo is a second round pick. You need him to come in and make an impact right away. And, if it is Braxton Jones, you've seen what you got in Braxton Jones. But if it's Ozzy Trapillo, I mean, that's a pretty big sign moving forward that, Dan Rochard and Ben Johnson are comfortable with putting a rookie out there at left tackle to hopefully solidify your line, because right now that's the biggest question on the offensive line. And, I'll say this, Trapillo is a big guy, man. Like seeing him out there, he is a big guy. Like that is a guy that can be an anchor at left tackle for years to come. But I just, again, they're not in pads, and, they are blocking a little bit, but he's done a pretty damn good job holding up. And, I think it's nothing but good for the offensive line to go up against Montez Sweat, Grady Jarrett, Andrew Billings, Dravon Dexter, even Dominic Robinson's made some plays, and guys like that, Deo, just going up against them in practices, it's definitely going to help. But yeah, I've been impressed with Ozzy. He's been one of my guys. I've been, circling a lot in practices for good things.
And to the Braxton Jones injury, I mean, the leg injuries, the ankle, it just seems like it's kind of this chronic thing that he keeps having to deal with through this surgery. And the fact that again, you're bringing in a younger, youthful guy that is protecting that edge and really needs to have those pivot feet down and 100%. I again, to me, I think that mentally and just from a psychological standpoint, the Bears have kind of I don't know the best way to put this. Convinced themselves that Braxton Jones is good enough.
Yeah. Which but
When in reality, and I think it's kind of along the same lines of what Bears fandom goes through every offseason where they
yeah,
think, "This is a really good roster."
yeah,
And then the season comes and it's not a really good roster. And
yeah.
I think the same thing can be said of left tackle where it's like, this is a serviceable left tackle. And now I think we're seeing something that frankly they haven't seen because A, they have not addressed it very well the last few years. And B, I can't think of the last time that Braxton Jones really had any type of contender that he's had to deal with.
No, I mean, yeah, I mean, there's who they brought in to
I
really compete. I mean, they drafted Kieran last year,
but he was injured.
but he was injured, right? So, I mean, yeah, there's just been guys who have come in, been quote unquote, swing tackle options.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, even Darnell Wright, they draft him like, yeah, right tackle. There you go. But I mean, to your point, like, and I agree, like Braxton Jones has been fine. There's no disrespect to him or anything like that. But at some point, I think we fall in love with this. Well, he's good for a 5th-round pick. Yeah, but like you need a stud at left tackle. If you're going to win the NFL, you need studs in the trenches. And I think you would agree with this. Like it's been a vulnerable spot on the offensive line. Most of the offensive line has been vulnerable for Ryan Poles in terms of trying to fix it. Like Ryan Bates hasn't been out there. They gave up a draft pick for him. Did they trade a draft pick? They traded a draft pick 2 years ago for, was it Bill Murray or someone else from the Dolphins?
It was the other one.
Yeah, who I'm totally blank on the name. But they've given up picks there. They finally
Yeah.
solidify, the interior offensive line. They solidify, they have Darnell Wright at right tackle. They're trying to solidify the left tackle spot. But yeah, I mean, like at some point you have to get past he's good for a 5th-round pick, and that's nothing against Braxton. He's been fine. I think there's been times where he's looked good as a left tackle. I think there's times where he'll even tell you like he's getting outmatched out there. So yeah, if it is Ozzy Trapillo at left tackle, I think he'd be the start of something very good. If it's Braxton, you look at it, you have Ozzy waiting in the wings. You probably don't pay Braxton unless he has just a dominant season. And also it's not a bad thing to go into the year with Ozzy starting and having Braxton sitting right there. And I think, another thing to kind of keep an eye on is their depth on the interior isn't the greatest. Like they have Jordan McFadden. Other than that, they have Luke Newman, who they just drafted out of Michigan State, who's played a little guard and center in minicamp. They have Doug Kramer, who'd probably be your backup center right now. But other than that, who's the backup besides, Kieran? You don't have, I mean, you can't really rely on Bill Murray and Ryan Bates at this point. So, yeah, I
It was
mean,
Dan Feeney, by the way.
Dan Feeney, that's who
Yeah.
it was. Yes. It's good to have the depth. And, I think they're going to have it at left tackle anyways. But, with Kieran, I think once you get that competition kind of settled as your two guys, and who's going to split the reps with the first team, because I guarantee you they will be splitting the reps with the first team in training camp. You can then put Kieran at left guard or right guard, or try him at right tackle as a backup, kind of things like that. So it kind of opens things up in my eyes.
Yeah, and really, I think this is a make or break for Kieran as well, just based on the struggles that he had coming out of that first year and seeing him on the field and immediately saying, "Okay, you're not ready. Like
Yeah. Well,
this is a bad idea."
it goes back to he missed all of the offseason. So he was
Right.
even further behind. And, people want to rag on him. That's fine. He didn't play well, but like the same time, man, it was almost like I felt bad because he was just getting thrown in like, here, go block the Redskins defensive line. Here, go block the Vikings defense. Here's Brian Flores. Good luck, kid. Like, you almost felt bad for him because he was behind and it wasn't his fault. Like, the Bears
But
didn't have a good plan.
but now it's there's no excuses. Like, you're
Yeah, no.
here, you're
Yeah,
doing it, and you're still getting outplayed. And
yeah,
there was arguments that, hey, if he was healthy, he's a borderline first round pick. Like, that was an argument that was continuously made for this kid, and I've yet to see it. Like, we there can't be this. And again, this kind of goes back to, like you said, with Braxton Jones. Like, he's good for a fifth round pick. There's really back to the Ryan Pace era where it was, well, he hits all of his mid-round picks.
yeah,
I'm like, I don't care about his mid-round picks. Look
yeah.
at his first round picks.
Those are
Like, do I have
bonuses.
to bring up Kevin White?
Yeah,
Like,
mid-round picks are bonuses. You know what I
right.
mean? Like, after, I think there's some fringe day, round 3 picks that could be bonuses. If you're a good team, you have good depth. But like, you're drafting these guys the first, second, early third rounds. You want them to come in and make an impact. That's why I think, like Ozzie, you're kind of expecting him to make an impact. If Ozzie wins a starting job, I think the expectations should be kind of high for him because he was a second round pick. He's a smart player, So we'll see. But you're absolutely right with Kieran too.
Yeah, it's at least there's promise. That's, I think, the positive that we need to look at more than anything with the line. And clearly they invested heavily, going out and getting 2 new guards and a new center and really anchoring everything together. I mean, it can only go up based on the amount of sacks that team had
Yeah.
a year ago
Well,
in trying its best to try and kill Caleb Williams. But
I know it's maybe going a little out of order here, but
okay.
transitioning from the offensive line into something that was fun today. So I want to talk about what was fun with the
Yeah,
offensive
we
line
we do have to talk about this.
because
We do.
this was awesome. And I showed you the videos because I needed you to do something for me. So you got to see them before a lot of people got to see them. And I was kind of telling some people like, heads up, like check Twitter when practice is over because this is going to be fun to see. And so we get out there, and generally for people that don't know how this works, is you get out there, the media has about 10, 12 minutes to shoot. Okay. Camera phones, professional cameras, TV, all that stuff. It's usually stretching and like individual drills. Today, I'm walking down, I'm looking at the running backs. I'm like, okay, I like to go watch Eric Bieniemy. I like to see where the wide receivers are. I like watching Antoine Randall, the quarterbacks throw. And I'm like, man, they got footballs here for these players. And then all of a sudden you see offensive linemen going out for passes and catching the football. And it was so much fun to watch. And a lot of the offensive linemen, man, held their own. There were a couple guys that, they're offensive linemen for a reason. But like,
Right.
for the most part, I mean, Darnell Wright, Joe Tooney, Jonah Jackson, Drew Dahlman, Kieran made a nice catch. Who else? Doug Kramer has a couple of nice catches. It was fun to actually see this. And you want to pull up the one? Do we have the clip for the Darnell Wright one?
Oh, I gotta see if I have it here.
But the highlight was Darnell Wright making an incredible one-handed catch. And when I say one-handed, adjusting his body like back shoulder-ish to snag the ball out of the air. It looked like something you'd see from Odell Beckham Jr. in like 2013, 14, whatever, when he was making those crazy catches. And it wasn't just the offensive lineman, man. Like, wide receivers were throwing the football, quarterbacks were going out for passes. Caleb Williams had a nice catch. Case Keenum actually I'm kicking myself because I did not have my phone on recording this, but he caught a ball about 30 yards down the field, like behind his back, which was like, whoa.
Man.
Yeah, that was some true athleticism. We got to see tight ends throw the football. Tyler Scott had a nice diving catch from like a running back. It was just fun. And you got to see Ben Johnson after was like, I told him we're only gonna do this one time this year. It's not gonna be in training camp. It's gonna be a fun day. And he liked it, man. And
Just
you
ruin
know,
our fun.
yes. Well, you get the Dan Skipper thing, you get Panay Sewell watching the Lions. Um, Obviously the Bears didn't show anything in terms of trick plays, like they're not going to, but it was kind of a fun little thing to watch to start practice.
So here, I did upload the clip. So here is
Yeah.
this is I believe Darnell Wright's catch, which is insane.
I mean, dude,
Just the full Odell Beckham, like one hand, turn around, grab it.
that was cool. And the crazy thing is like the defense on the other field. And for those that saw that clip, like there's two fields right there. On Tuesday or Wednesday's practice, I was on the other field watching the defense because they're doing like interception drills. And today I was like, you know what? I'll watch the offense, and I'm thankful I did because that was really cool. And there was a couple of us sitting there. Scott Bear from Marquee, Adam Hogue, a couple guys in the end zone, and we were all just kind of like, "Whoa!" Like, what was that? That
What did
was
I just watch?
yeah, that was
Uh,
pretty cool, man.
so who is the other one that we got here? Who was the other clip?
This was Caleb Williams.
Caleb Williams. All right,
Yes,
let's
catching.
pull that up
He
here.
threw the ball. He did cross the pylon. I made sure he did cross the pylon. He did not spike it. I have a couple
Let go of
more.
the ball early.
Yeah, no. I have a couple more I'll upload to like social media and YouTube. Nothing like that. That was crazy, but it was fun. It was nice to see them kind of get into the spirit of things and have fun that final mini camp practice.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that for all purposes of just trying to get things right, that for the how hard Ben Johnson has been on this team, that still maintaining that, there's still an ability to have fun, to still kind of unwind with everything. And all I could think of just seeing all these clips about the offensive lineman catching the ball is like, in the back of his mind, I'm just thinking Lions plays and trick
Yeah,
plays and all this stuff, and it's like, okay, who's gonna be our Penei Sewell that's that's gonna be catching balls
yeah.
off the left side of the
You're,
line.
I have a feeling we're going to hear 58 is reported eligible
Yeah,
a lot this year. And, maybe Ben Johnson shocks us all and doesn't run a play like that and saves it. But yeah, I mean, at least he got a look at who can catch the ball and maybe who needs some, like, unlike last year where they just gave the ball to Doug Kramer and just like, yeah, here you go.
yeah. Not much creativity there by any means, but it works out for him. And then last offensive touch point here, Kyle Monangai. Again, late
Yeah,
pick, really the arguably de facto RB3, maybe two.
true.
I don't know what Roshan Johnson is really going to be doing in this offense. It's kind of hard to tell, but there was a lot of positives about Kyle Monangai over these last couple days.
Yeah, and I mean he's someone like you said, kind of that RB3-2 where he's going to be on the depth chart. Travis Homer is probably not going anywhere due to special teams value, but he caught a touchdown pass, Wednesday, Tuesday, one of those practices at the end of the drill. I think it was Tuesday. No, had to be Wednesday. At the end of the drill, 2-minute drill, nice pass out in the flat, ran a nice route, got by, I think Jonathan Owens it was, caught it. But yeah, man, he runs hard too. And like one thing I try to watch is, they can't tackle, so they're blowing the play dead. You're pretty much just touching the players. It's nothing, physical. But just continues to run. He finishes all his runs to the end zone. Um, Eric Bieniemy's gotten at him. There's that clip about something he was cussing at him during a drill. That was kind of funny to watch. But yeah, he gets it, man. I think he's going to be a nice little surprise in this offense.
Yeah, and again, now that we're past June 1st, probably see a little bit more movement to some
Yeah,
signings, some releases with that post June 1 setup that the salary cap works off of. But for I think a lot of folks, depending on where the rest of the salary cap lies for the rest of the season, if somebody does get an extension, frees up more cap room, like we talked about with Joe Tooney, and what they were able to do with him. If there's another player on the roster where that makes sense to do that, if the Bears would look to bringing in one of those veteran running backs that's still out there, like a J.K. Dobbins or a Nick Chubb, that has that veteran presence. I'm not necessarily convinced that that's going to occur, but it's good that you're seeing a little bit more oomph and energy out of rookies like Monangai that frankly have proved at a collegiate level in the Big Ten. I mean, he led the Big Ten in rushing last year.
yeah.
He's a legitimate runner, even though he played for a not so great Rutgers team. Like that's just the nature of it. And he's small. Again, size probably knocking him down quite a bit to what a lot of folks think he could do at the next level. But then you look at guys that say like Darren Sproles, for example, who was able to catch it out of the backfield, who was able to run it, go in between the tackles, that was able to get it done. So it is doable. It's just not as transferable as your normal 5'11", 225-pound rock that's just going to power through everything.
Yeah, I mean, I think where he's going to be valuable and where he can earn, some early snaps and reps is, pass blocking.
Yeah.
Because that was a positive for him at Rutgers. Like, where can he excel? There you go, pass blocking. That's the easiest way to define the football field is through pass blocking. So, yeah, I'm kind of curious to see how that shakes out because I do think, well, Dobbins visited Denver last night or something like that, and
They don't need another back. I
yeah,
don't understand that at all, but
I don't
whatever.
know what they're doing. And then you got Chubb out there. Yeah, I don't know. I feel like they're comfortable rolling with Swift and Roshan and Monangai and Homer and maybe bringing out, Ian Wheeler's back out there as another thing. He's back out there
Yep.
practicing, which is nice. Um, so yeah, I honestly I think they're probably set at running back. I think they're comfortable there, but I don't know. I'd probably prefer Dobbins over Chubb. I don't know how you feel about it. I feel like you're not going to get the Chubb. Like I don't know if people are expecting it, but I don't even know if you get like close to Chubb that you know.
And I mean, he was not that productive last year. If you look at the metrics for what he was able to do with the Browns coming off of the severe knee injury midway through last year, and uh, between that and even Dobbins' injury history, for the most part, he was able to stay healthy last year, which was kind of a surprise. But a guy that has ruptured Achilles, torn an ACL, done a lot where people have written him off numerous times because of his injury history, that you need to weigh those factors into whether or not it's worth going down that path, because I mean, he's not that young either. It's again another guy that has been around for quite a few years and has some mileage on what he's been able to do both at the collegiate and professional level. I don't know. I think I kind of agree with you that they are comfortable with going with this and seeing where
Yeah.
it leads. And maybe, once they get into that first or second week of training camp and see things a little bit clearer to what they have, that, make a decision there. Maybe there'll be a big cut that will occur. Or maybe there will be a player that gets thrown up on the trade block. Again, a lot of people were talking about Brees Hall with the Jets being a guy that might become available with all of the changes that they're doing out in New York. Again, I think that there are certain scenarios, certain storylines that haven't necessarily been fully written, but I feel a little bit more comfortable in that ending following kind of what we
Yeah.
saw in this training, in this, voluntary, or excuse me, mandatory minicamp.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think it's gonna be I think they're comfortable with what they have, and I think they really like Monangai. I think they're fine with Swift for this year. But you have to look for a solution next year because he could be a cut candidate, save you a lot of money because
Yeah.
we're gonna have to figure out the cap space next year. So yeah, I think they're probably fine with the running backs right now.
Yeah, and, I mean, defensive side of the ball, it seemed like it was pretty even keel. I don't
Yeah,
know if there was a I mean, and again, you can't really get into the physical nature of anything. I know Jaquan Brisker's starting to collect receipts on a lot of
yeah,
people that wrote him off after the
yeah.
concussion
Well,
last year.
I want to say that I want to say this about Jaquan Brisker. It was nice to hear from him and see him up there because he was
Instead of
not
tweets.
instead of tweets. I mean, we haven't talked to him since goodness, London, the game,
Mm,
the week of London.
wow.
I was curious if he was gonna maybe unload on the old excuse me coaching staff but that was kind of some scary stuff listening to him because he said he had to retrain his nervous system, which
Yeah,
I
that
mean, because of that type of concussion, I don't know. It was interesting. I mean, he's been out there. He looks the same. He doesn't look like he's lost a step. He's kind of that physical, aggressive safety. Um, he's fired up too, man. He's out there yelling, um, doing a lot. But the scary thing is you hope for his sake that he doesn't have another bad concussion or anything like that because I don't know who know I mean, who knows with concussions, but it was good to see him out there and get that secondary kind of solidified.
and, it's weird hearing him talk about those concussions and if he was questioning whether to retire, and I don't know. Like, for like you said, the more concussions a player has, the more it gets dicey to,
Yeah,
and again, like you said, having to retrain your nervous system,
yeah,
that
it's
seems
scary.
serious.
Yeah, that's scary, man. That scares the crap out of me. Yeah, but I mean, he said, I mean, I don't know if you heard the interview at all, but he was saying he wanted to go out there. He was gonna get on that plane and something that night before he was like, yeah, my body's not right, and he was gonna try and play through. I mean, that's scary, man. And yeah, I don't. I mean, he's another guy that you're hoping you have a big upcoming season. If he can stay healthy, he said it, he's just got to stay healthy. And I think he's
Yeah.
right. I think when he stays healthy, he's a really good safety. Um, part of me kind of wonders, you see Kyler Gordon got rewarded. Same draft class. Ryan Poles' first two picks. Maybe he's got that as motivation too. Hey, I've been out here. I'm a good player, but can't stay healthy. But I guess overall main point of the defense, yeah, they look good. I like what Dennis Allen is going to bring, and I think Tyreek Stevenson kind of said it the best. He said, this defense lets you earn your money as if you're a defensive back, playing the man to man, showcasing that. I think it's a good defense. Up front, watching. They could kick. They had a line today where essentially it was Montez Sweat, Grady Jarrett, Gavon Dexter, and Dominic Robinson, and they could rotate Andrew Billington. They can rotate Deo in. They can do some things on that defensive line. And I think that defensive line is going to get toward the quarterback a lot more than they have in the past. But they're going to have to, though. They just, they're going to have to. But, Kyler Gordon not out there. Jalen Johnson had an excuse absence. It was kind of interesting to see where guys were kind of filling in. It was, Josh Blackwell was playing the slot. I think it's I'm getting his name right. Nashawn Wright was the starting defensive back opposite of Tyreek Stevenson with Jalen Johnson out. So you're getting guys getting some reps.
Where's Terrell
Um,
Smith?
not out there, not practicing.
Yeah.
Hurt. Yeah. Linebackers, Noah Sewell, um, Ruben Hippolyte, both getting their chance to play alongside Tremaine Edmonds. That'll be kind of a battle to watch between them two. because Amen's not out there right now. He's another guy in the race for that. But yeah, it's hard to kind of you know grade the defense. They did make some plays though. Jonathan Owens should have had 2 interceptions yesterday. Tyreek Stevenson picked off Caleb Williams today. There's another. I forgot who else. I think Jaquan Brisker got an interception earlier last week or this week. But yeah, I mean, I think Dennis Allen's going to change a lot of things for this defense.
And again, very much needed.
Yeah, yeah,
Again, going from a very soft-spoken defensive mind to an in-your-face, we're going to beat the living crap out of you
yes,
defensive mind, night and day. And even those voices that are now on that defensive side of the ball with Grady Jarrett, kind of leading the way as that veteran presence is going to do such good things for this team. I
yeah. And,
think just
and Gervon Dexter, like emerging as a leader too. He talked
yeah.
about that, emerging as a leader and organizing the workouts. So yeah, I'm with you, man. I'm 100% agree on that.
And we got one more voluntary OTA coming up here on June 9th. So just a
Yes,
couple days away, June 9th to June 11th. The final one before we end up wrapping up for the early summer. And then we await training camp,
training
everybody's
camp.
favorite, the end of July. As it starts to get real, we start talking preseason and the battles begin at a lot
Yes,
of these positions that were talked about, not necessarily fought over in, with all the injuries and people not being there and recovery and everything, but close to being real with the
yes,
pads and
yeah.
everything else.
That's dog days of summer, man. That's where it gets fun. It gets busy, but it gets fun.
So one player that you'd say needs to prove something here that you came away saying, all right, next go around, we got to see this guy, or else there might be trouble.
For training camp, you mean?
Yeah,
Yeah. It's a good question. I mean, I would probably say like on offense, I and it's hard right now to see it because for running backs, like you don't like they're running, but like they're not getting tackled, kind of things like that.
yeah.
So I would like to say someone like DeAndre Swift or Roshan Johnson, kind of showing something in training camp. But honestly, man, I would probably go with and I think the obvious answer is Caleb Williams too because of the progression and things like that. I think Cole Kmet, man. I think Cole Kmet has to take advantage of every opportunity he's going to get in training camp. I think like depending on how long Colson Loveland's out, if Kmet gets those reps early and shows like, yeah, I can be a valuable part of this offense. You have something there. I would probably say Kmet. Like defensively, I would probably say that one's actually kind of hard. I'm trying to think now. Like I think Tyreek Stevenson, and it's
Yeah,
more not like the fully on a play, but I think now he even said, it doesn't need to be talked about again with the whole Washington thing. Like it hasn't really been brought up by Ben Johnson or Al Harris. And he said, I'm paraphrasing, but he said like my teammates know that I owe them for me to go out there and play my hardest every game. And I think that starts from training camp because I think he met with Al Harris and the Cowboys in that pre-draft process, and Al Harris loved him. I think Tyreek Stevenson could have a really damn good year in Dennis Allen's defense just because of how physical he is and how looking at him at Miami, watching him coming out of Miami, man coverage was like his, the plus on him. And Dennis Allen's going to let you play a lot of man coverage. So I would say Tyreek Stevenson in that facet. You know, we'll see though. We'll see. There's a couple other guys maybe on the roster. Kieran Amagaji, Braxton Jones, probably good answers to that question, but it's kind of hard to tell this early.
I one name I do want to see make a little bit more of an impact because he is going to be at the very top list of cut candidates a year from now, and that's
Okay.
Tremaine Edmonds. I
Yes.
I, I want to see more out of him because his number is going to be $15 billion in savings come
Yeah,
the 2026 offseason, and that is significant. Is it something that they can restructure, or is this a guy that just isn't playing to that gigantic contract that
yeah,
they gave him 4 years, $72 million back in 2023? Entering year three of that, I think there needs to be a little bit more shown to say, okay, this guy's worth it, and he's worth, what he's able to put on the field next to TJ Edwards and whoever wins that other linebacker spot. Again, it's not necessarily a very high volume position
yeah.
at linebacker. It's very interesting how Dennis Allen utilizes the linebacker position, but I'm curious to see how he's going to fit into this because I feel like he's almost been a forgotten name to
Yeah.
just how much he's making and the output that he's put on the field. I
And
think there needs to be some justification there for him.
to be honest, CJ Edwards has played better than him.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah. So, I mean, you're right. That's a good one. That's actually a good one because they drafted Ruben Hippolyte for a reason. Will Noah Sewell make this roster? I don't know, but I could see, Tremaine being the cut candidate because, like you said, it's gonna save him. It could save him a lot of money, and they have some cap questions going into next year. And if Caleb's a guy, and you're gonna be talking about a contract extension within 2 years, a lot of money. So
A lot of money.
yeah, and the way these quarterbacks are getting paid, man, it is crazy.
To say the least, to
Yeah,
say the least. But we'll see. We'll see. Again, one more voluntary OTA coming up here, and then training camp, and then it's all systems go for the
yeah,
2025 season. So that's going to do it here for this episode of the Bear Report podcast. Do appreciate each and every one of you listening, watching, wherever you're taking in this information and fun that we've had to chatter about here over the last 52 minutes. We do appreciate it nonetheless. So, for Zach Pearson, I'm Stephen Johnson. Thank you. And we will talk to you next time right here on the Bear Report and bearreport.com.